Good morning. David was supposed to be out of town, I think, this weekend. We set this up a couple of months ago, but because of Vicky's surgery, they just wiped out all their vacation plans, so we decided to go ahead with the lesson this morning. The lesson this morning is based upon what happened to this lady, Ruth Maricopa. She is a Zimbabwean. She worked in the prison system over there, and she lost her job. She lost her job in large part because of what this congregation has done. So actions have consequences, and we're going to talk about those consequences this morning. But like the rest of the story, we're going to wait till we get to the end of the lesson to find out how and why she lost her job. Last week in Bible class, we went over the church budget. In the budget, $50,000, and this has been steady for the last several years, is earmarked for missions. Now, there are other mission efforts that are involved in the budget, but the mission committee as such has a budget of $50,000 per year. That budget in our work here, domestically and internationally, covers a number of different areas. Locally, for over 10 years, we have sponsored Celebrate Recovery. Celebrate Recovery doesn't cost anything out of the budget. You have been very gracious, and over that period of time, every Monday night, some family in this congregation provides a free meal for the people who attend there. And then there is individual donations that's given to support any other needs that Celebrate Recovery has. We also, in this congregation, in this community, do basic needs. Basic needs touches the lives of a number of people. But basic needs is not an item in the church budget because individuals are very gracious to give. And then there are some other sources of income, some grants, the garage sale that you're aware of. And so basic needs takes care of all that they do out of those sources. But those are two ministries, local ministries, that have an impact on a number of people, but aren't part of that $50,000. Some of the things that are part of the $50,000 are supporting Foster's Home. Now, Texans for Christ is a separate item in the budget. It's not part of the mission budget. But for decades, this congregation has totally been the total support for the campus ministry program at Tarleton and continues to be. And then something that is part of the budget we finally got around to is the jail ministry. Everywhere from the local county jail to jails throughout the state and prisons throughout the state and in even some other states, this congregation is involved in jail ministry. The jail ministry has reached thousands of people. In the jail ministry alone, and this number is from 2024, so over 7,000 Bibles have been mailed out to various inmates in a number of different states, most of them in Texas. Along with the Bibles, the major thrust of this ministry is having these people work through the New Life Behavior lessons. New Life Behavior is a program that was developed out of Corpus Christi, some congregations down there. It has like 195 lessons, and thousands of people throughout prison systems and jails in Texas and in other states have went through that curriculum. But most of the money of that $50,000 per year goes towards international missions. And for decades, for about 50 years, this congregation's main focus as far as international missions has been in the country of Zimbabwe. If you're old enough, you know that used to be called Rhodesia. So you really date yourself if you know that name. In the far northeastern corner of the nation, where that arrow is, in a very rural area, in the middle of nowhere, is the town of Ruwange. And this congregation for 40-something years supported Todd Mazambati, who is pictured here, as the minister in that area. With him is his youngest son. On that granite outcrop is where one of the first places they started holding services. I guess it's in Shona, that's called a Dawala. So they had outdoor meetings, and when he was a boy, Gideon, who's pictured there with his dad, Gideon was the one who led singing for that congregation. This congregation was pretty much, I think, the sole support for Todd, again, for about 40 years until his passing a few years ago. Over the years, the congregation developed there in Ruwange and several other congregations as well. Now, this congregation continues to support the preacher who is there now in Ruwange, and also support some other people there locally. This is a secondary school that is there in Ruwange, and the local congregation in Ruwange is kind of the overseeing body for this school. They really we don't provide much in the way of financial support. Over several years ago, we helped them build a building or two, and we've helped on a few other things, but the money comes from the government. The teachers are paid by the government. They're paid a very small salary, but we have a big influence. The congregation in Ruwange has a big influence on that school. And while we continue to support some of the work in Ruwange, about 10 years ago, our focus in Zimbabwe changed. We met Stanley Shirini. Stanley was preaching for one of the largest congregations in Zimbabwe, and by Zimbabwean standards was very well off, had a house, had a car, had a salary, but his real passion, his calling, was for prison ministry. And so he gave up all of that and went into full-time prison ministry. And this congregation, along with New Life Behavior International, now is pretty much his total support. Stanley, for the past 10 years, along with a co-worker of his by the name of Eric, has been working in the prison systems in Zimbabwe. They go to 23 prisons and visit, and we introduce them to New Life Behavior curriculum. There's a separate organization called New Life Behavior International, but it's really the same curriculum. And so that's what they're using in the prisons in Zimbabwe. And as we speak today, they have 6,000 prisoners who are going through the curriculum. Stanley has baptized thousands of prisoners in the prison system there in Zimbabwe. And if you can read this, maybe it's too small. New Life Behavior says that it is not a Bible curriculum, but it is a curriculum that uses the Bible to produce change in thinking, attitudes, and behavior of people. And so these 195 lessons certainly include becoming a Christian, but they also help people understand how to be a parent, how to be a good spouse, how to deal with your anger, how to combat addiction, and just how to live a life. Live a life that has hope, live a life that you can get along in society and not end up in jail. Now, since you have a curriculum that uses the Bible but is not based on the Bible, you still really need Bibles. And here is Stanley with a trunk full of Bibles that have been provided in large part by this congregation. In preparation for this lesson, Stanley sent me a 2-minute video, and we're going to try playing it. I think it's the next one up.
Jesus will heed our prayer when we pray. He's when we pray. He'll answer you. Just wait on him. He'll hear your prayer. He'll answer you.
The 21,000 Bibles that Stanley has distributed, and there's a couple other people, some of those Bibles have been given to, but those 21,000 Bibles in large part have come from this congregation. Now, there have been some other people who have donated. 7,000 Bibles, over 7,000 Bibles, this congregation has distributed to jails and prisons here in the United States. These Bibles vary in price, depends upon, where we're getting them from. They've ranged anywhere from $3.50 to $8.50. English is the official language in Zimbabwe, but the northern part of the country, where our efforts and where Stanley's efforts are centered, their mother tongue is Shona. So you have a lot of people, even though English is the official language and the school systems are taught in English and all official, government work, correspondence, and everything else is in English, still a lot of people, if not totally, at least their best understanding is in Shona, especially among the elderly. So we've given out both Shona Bibles and English Bibles. Now, where does that money come from? Well, week after week we have the kids come up here, and that is a very cute thing to do. It's a very heartwarming thing to see these kids participate and give. But that money goes into what we call the Glenn Moody Fund. Glenn Moody passed away several years ago. He didn't have a lot of money, but he left $10,500 in a fund and said, please use it to distribute Bibles. The money that he donated is long gone, but we kept the idea going and we call it the Glenn Moody Fund, and nearly $60,000 all total has been given through that fund through the years. Currently, I think there's about $4,400 in the fund. So that's where that money's going to. Most of it has went to purchase Bibles in Zimbabwe. We've sent a few to Mexico in the past, but virtually all the money went to Zimbabwe. The Mission Fund has a small amount of money allocated that we use from time to time for Bibles. Individuals in this congregation, and even in other congregations, and just different people, have been very generous to donate money for the Bibles that have been sent in the prison systems, and some of that money has went towards the Bibles that go to Zimbabwe. And then New Life Behavior International. New Life Behavior International is supporting, I don't know how many preachers and works in everywhere from the Philippines all throughout Africa and a lot of other places. So their money goes in just all different types of directions. But the director of it, Mike Biggers, who lives in the Metroplex, has been over there. He's visited Stanley. He's visited with us. And he's very impressed with the work that Stanley and Eric have been able to do. And so they partner with us in supporting some of Stanley and Eric's work. And at times we've gotten some money from them to help purchase and send Bibles to him. The Bibles generally are printed in India. Not in India. Well, some of them are. We've found a source for Bibles in India, but most all of them, like World Bible School, all those Bibles are printed in China. Zimbabwe doesn't even have the printing capabilities to print books or Bibles in their country. The prison system in Zimbabwe is, all I can say is something else. And it reminds me of Psalm 119. If you look closely, you see these green blocks that a lot of them have? Those are bars of soap. They are happy to get a bar of soap. Now, what does that tell you about what they have on a daily, weekly basis? You say, well, they all have these nice, bright, clean uniforms on. They have nice, bright, clean uniforms on because their picture is being taken. The times that I've been there, and the bottom picture is Aaron in the yard there with a bunch of prisoners from 2 years ago. You notice that they don't have nice, bright prison uniforms on. Some of the ladies have some. Many of the prisons have a female section and a male section. And Stanley says that in the past, a lot of times, he does not want to take his wife with him to the prison because they don't hardly have any clothes on. We are never allowed to take any pictures. Stanley doesn't take any pictures. All these pictures are provided. All these pictures are staged. Behind Aaron there, you see the doors. In the cell blocks, anywhere from 50 to 150 people are housed. There are no beds. They sleep on the floor. They are locked in there for 16 to 17 hours a day, from around 3 o'clock in the afternoon till 7 o'clock in the morning. Zimbabwe is not a place that you want to be in prison in. And so it reminds me of the effort, the impact that they've been able to have in the prison system, and the hope that they have been able to bring, and the salvation they have seen so many people receive, reminds me of Psalm 119. This is my comfort in my affliction, that your promise gives me life. It is the gospel that gives life to many of these people in prison. And it's the gospel that gives life to so many people in Zimbabwe. The average income in Zimbabwe is $3,000. That is not per month. That is per year. That's $250 a month. The unemployment rate in Zimbabwe, there's an official unemployment rate, and then there is the one that they figure depends on how you calculate it. The unofficial employment rate ranges as high as 95%. Only like maybe 10 to 15% of the people have what you would call a formal job. A formal job is one that it's a normal job. You pay taxes, you're employed by somebody, you have a understanding, you're going to work. Most of the people are out peddling. Peddlers are on the street all over the place in Zimbabwe. They're selling tomatoes. They're selling roasted ears of corn. They're selling these phone cards that you get the minutes on your phone with. They're selling clothes. The informal economy is what the vast majority of the people are. That's how they're surviving. And so this comfort in their affliction certainly applies to those in the prison system, but it applies really to everybody in Zimbabwe. The second passage here, teach me good judgment and knowledge, for I believe in your commandments. Before I was afflicted, I went astray, but now I keep your word. You are good and do good. Teach me your statutes. And then it is good for me that I was afflicted, that I might learn your statutes. Those verses from Psalm 119 fit perfectly with the people that they are teaching in the prison systems and the ones who are receiving these Bibles. This is a note that Stanley received in 2019. And I want to read it for you in case you have trouble reading it. The guy gives his name and he says, "You're the one that gave me that brown Bible on the 10th of May. I was arrested for fish poaching. I was caught catching fish with a net without a license." All right? Fishing without a license. He was given 18 months in the prison system. Next time you complain about a ticket, or next time you complain about some minor infraction, think how lucky we are. Thank you for the Bible. I have found joy in reading it. By giving me the Bible, it means to me that you have told me to change my life and religion. I was a Muslim before I was baptized on the 10th. All my Muslim friends neglected me, but you have shown me love above all. You have accepted me. And then he gives Stanley a request. Can you visit my wife and kids? They stay 20 kilometers from here, about 12 miles. My idea for requesting you to visit them is for them to know Jesus. Well, he went and visited with him, studied with the wife, and this happens a lot. The prisoners ask him to go and talk to family members on the outside. And the man's wife became a Christian. When I was a Muslim, I never had the whole Quran, but today I have the Bible and happiness. You gave my life and a torch. What is left for me is to use the torch which will light my way. May God bless you and your friends who support the work. I didn't know what to title the lesson for today, but this letter gave me the title, Pass the Torch. And what this prisoner was asking of Stanley is what we're doing by sending these Bibles and by what you are doing in so many different ways. When you teach a class, when you teach a children's class, you are passing the torch. When you give towards the Glenn Moody Fund, you are helping to pass the torch. When you give on the first day of the week, you are passing the torch. If you provide a meal for Celebrate Recovery on Monday night, you're helping to support a ministry and you are passing the torch. There are so many different ways in which God allows us to pass the torch. And that's what Psalm 119, the first song that Greg led us in this morning, that's from Psalm 119, verse 105. Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. What Stanley realized less than a year ago is that there's other things that can be done in the prison system and really in a way to reach more people. And what he came across were these solar players. They're called solar music players, but you can put a little chip in them, which he does. He records all of the Bible in Shona, and he can also, in some cases, puts the Bible in English on the chip, and also puts songs on it. And then they got permission, and they're passing them out in the various prisons. Right now, he's passed out 300 of them. Remember, these guys are locked away for 16 to 17 hours a day. And you say, well, they can just sit there on the floor and read by the light. Well, in Zimbabwe, electricity is very sporadic, and many times they don't even have electricity at night. So what he's finding is that in these different cells, they are spending a lot of time listening to the Bible, listening to the songs, when there's nothing else to do. And he estimates that at least 6,000 people, these 6,000 that are taking the lessons, they are using these solar players. He's in need of getting some more solar players to reach out to about another 2,000. But the solar players have become very popular. He's gotten letters from the prison officials about how this is changing behavior and what it is doing for morale within the prison systems. And in fact, the prison guards, they have meetings in big assembly halls. These aren't big enough if you're in a big room, really, not loud enough. So they requested, and I think we provided the money for getting 2 bigger ones so they could use them with the prison guards with their meetings. This gentleman here is one of 3 brothers. All 3 brothers are serving 22 years for armed robbery. You notice he's got a red stripe on his chest. That means he's considered a dangerous convict. The 3 of them Stanley studied with. They were 2 years into 22 years in. And the brothers became Christians. The brothers asked Stanley, will you go and will you teach my grandmother? And so they went and taught Grandma. The problem with Grandma is she's part of that older generation and she can't read or write. So they went ahead and gave her a solar player as well. But even those who are in prison can pass the torch. And again, it's not just for prisoners, but it's for all of us. Psalm 119, verse 9. How can a young man keep his way pure? By guarding it according to your word. With my whole heart I seek you. Let me not wander from your commandment. I've stored up your word in my heart that I might not sin against you. And then he goes on, teach me your statutes. In your way I delight. I will meditate on your precepts. And then finally, I will delight in your statutes. I will not forget your word. All of us in various ways can pass the torch. And then Isaiah 42. Isaiah 42 is really talking about the Lord, talking about Jesus. Behold my servant whom I uphold, my chosen in whom I delight. That's referring to Jesus. But in the context, skipping down to verse 6 and 7, Jesus is portrayed as a light for the nations, to open the eyes that are blind, to bring out the prisoners from the dungeon, from the prison, those who sit in darkness. Isn't it striking that this passage literally and figuratively is what giving these Bibles to prisoners is doing? They are literally sitting in darkness. But their eyes are opened, and these Bibles are a light to the nation. So what we're doing from John chapter 1 is providing these Bibles. The other things you do, you're giving the Word that tells the world about the Word, about Jesus. In verse 4 of this passage, in him, that is in Jesus, was life, and the life was the light of man. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. Again, figuratively and literally, the light is shining in darkness in these prison cells in Zimbabwe because of what we have done and the people we have partnered with to provide these Bibles, to provide these solar players. So now the rest of the story as we conclude. Ruth worked in the prison system, and she worked in the supply room. Well, Stanley gets these solar players, and so he gives them, and they're stored, at least some of them are stored in the supply room where Ruth works. Well, Ruth takes one of them home over the weekend because her grandpa, who is blind from cataracts that were never properly taken care of, she wants him to hear about Jesus. He's a Muslim. And going blind and in the condition he's in, all of his friends have pretty much deserted him. So she takes one home over the weekend, except on the way home, somebody sees her with the solar player. They think she's stealing it. So she loses her job. You see, actions have consequences. And the actions that we did by providing money for these things, in a way, we've helped get her fired. Well, Stanley goes when they have the hearing for her, and Stanley testifies on her behalf. They explain what the situation is, and she was reinstated. So it does have a good ending. But you see, all she was trying to do was to pass the torch. And so you see this over and over again. If Stanley were here, he could spend hours giving the stories of what the gospel is doing in and outside of prison in Zimbabwe. And what it's doing there, it's doing throughout the world and throughout communities. That's just the place that we focus our efforts. So I hope by this lesson this morning that we're all encouraged to see that the small part that we have in these efforts is bringing a number of people into the kingdom, is bringing happiness and hope, and it's bringing an answer, it's bringing salvation to people who are in desperate need of it. Both spiritually, they're in desperate need of it. They're in desperate need of it physically in the situation they're in. Many people in Zimbabwe just don't have the money even to buy a Bible. Even to buy a Bible, it would cost $5. So the next time you go to Starbucks and you go to 7B, or you go to whatever tea you're drinking, think about that. For less than the price, you can pass the torch. When you teach that children's class and they get a little rowdy, and you're teaching it week after week, realize what you're doing for those kids. You're passing the torch. May God continue to bless us. May we appreciate all the blessings that He has given us. If we can help you in any way this morning, please come as together we stand and sing.